So I felt the need to really put myself into the foray in regards to this A-log stuff because I feel as if, again, I watch all the streams. I'm like the actual savant of this. I know the most out of anybody. And it seems to me, as somebody who's been lurking for a lot, that this RPG thing seems to be getting out of hand a little bit. And I find it all the more entertaining because there's a whole lot of seed on many different parts. And I'll really just give a third position on it. Now, granted, I feel as if the foreground has to be established in some context because there's some people that don't know about it. So obviously there's this whole subculture of people making fun of lolcows on the internet, and part of this has to do with the nature of YouTube. And now we're talking about Twitter drama. And so with that being said, so this Red Pill Gaming guy, which I've talked about in the distant past, he basically really got mad at the Kino Casino in a large part because again he was one of these fans and he was a relatively big streamer. He was probably like the third biggest streamer in regards to A-logging America First or whatever. And he seemed to get mad over what exactly? Well, he got mad. So the first thing that the Kino Casino did was that they basically made fun of him. What did they do this time, right? Well, basically they took the piss on him because a couple years ago he did the song Imagine by John Lennon, which is every hippie's favorite song. And apparently he started singing about how imagining if there's no liberals, what if George Floyd something, what if there were no Jews, something like really ridiculous like that. And then he started, filleting Nick Fuentes. And, the Kino Casino made fun of him. And rightfully so, because it's funny. And moreover, it's just super gay. And I think it belies the point that, again, he's a guy who at the time was probably like 30 years old over here singing about his leader who was like 20 at the time. And all of a sudden, and even if it's a joke, there's truth in jest. And the problem is also, what kind of 30-year-old man who's high IQ at all is going to listen to Nick Fuentes and then also spend the next 2 years criticizing him. And so that kind of undermines his intelligence. I've seen nobody else make this point, but I just wanted to make that clear. Now, moreover, it seems somewhat prescient to also notice the fact that he's mad because people, made fun of him in that context. And then he has this whole other ordeal in regards to like, well, Worski or PPP actually was the one that picked it, and therefore I'm going to block this person. And that just came off as petty. The reason why it came off as petty, of course, is because he seemingly was of the opinion that, he was betrayed or something. And to view this whole internet thing as like a betrayal or public trust thing, it's just really feminine and really gay, in my opinion. Moreover, it seems as if all of a sudden now we're in a society where we are expecting to not dox each other. And I'll get into this bigger assumption now. The bigger point is that he got mad over that, and so he blocked Andy Worski on Twitter. That seemed very feminine in its nature. The reason why it came off as feminine is because something that you should have laughed off at basically divulged into you getting personally upset to the point where you blocked Andy Worski. Now, the Kino Casino is running a narrative right now that it was PvP actually, and that he surprised Worski with that video. Turns out that that was the truth. Anyway, so what's his name? So Red Pill Gaming obviously got mad at that. And so now all of a sudden he's really pissed off. And now that brings into the second segment, which has to do with the fact that they keep up bringing his name. And so they name dox him. Now, there's a whole argument on either side that's saying, well, you got doxed by the Groypers, therefore it's okay to bring it up because we all know it at this point. And then there's the argument from RPG that is saying, well, you can't call me Teddy Feezer because only my enemies call me that, and that's just trying to ruin my life. And out of respect for me, you ought not bring that name up. Well, the thing is that would only make sense if you're famous, okay? Like if you watch these Red Pill podcasts where they all suck up to Andrew Tate, they're all respecting him. It's not reciprocated, okay? Like Sneeko is filleting Andrew Tate way more than Andrew Tate is mentioning Sneeko. But since one is bigger than the other one, they know their place. No, it isn't fair. No, it isn't like the nicest thing. But this is how it works with clout on the internet. So, RPG saying like, oh, the Kino Casino ought to respect my really funny name and not dox me. Well, the fact is that the name is funny and the dox is already out there. And he might renege and, really, come to fist basically on the internet over whether or not it's ethical to bring up the name. But the fact is that the name is out there. So I would just give up at this point. It'd be kind of like if it were like 2012 and Kim Kardashian were like manually flagging different pornography sites because apparently they posted her like a leaked sex tape when everybody knows that, it's already out there. You might as well just not even fight it at that point. And so for him to really bring attention to it was really the Streisand effect. And this documentarian, Porcelain, who's also in the A-log sphere, he really brought this point into reality when he tweeted something along the lines of he was, RPG, that being, was the Streisand effect and the Streisand phenomenon in effect. He basically will, bring fire and pour gas on these already existing fires over things that really get under his skin. And so now he's really just festering and feasting over things that people would have just laughed off normally. And that's why Jaden McNeil has more respect across the board than Red Pill Gaming. The reason why is because Jaden McNeil knows when to laugh certain things off. He has very few flaws as a person, so he really doesn't deal with a lot of criticism. But when he does, he tends to laugh it off, and so he's okay with that. You see that with Mr. Medicare, one of the people that everybody likes in the sector. Apparently, he gets away with a lot because he laughs it off. When you look at what a lot of Mr. Medicare does, a lot of it is really cringe, right? Like he's okay. So think about it. There's a lot of these like internet, white nationalist people that are like, oh, you can't marry a colored person, and so he's married to an Asian person. That is contradictory in my opinion if he does believe those things, which he kind of does. Do people really give him crap for it? No, because he's able to laugh it off. And the same way that Jaden does, Medicare does, RPG needs to do the same. And he keeps on begging the question of like, well, we're supposed to be this A-log ethical journalist movement. No, we're not actually. And you're the minority opinion, which is why he's saying that he's going to start streaming on Kick next week. Because apparently he cannot take it over here. Moreover, it seems as if he chose this like middle ground where basically he got made fun of egregiously, and they roasted him pretty hard on the Kino Casino like for 2 days in a row. And instead of saying, well, I'm going to kiss the ring, or I'm going to go scorched earth on the fat guy and the cokehead allegedly, all of a sudden he's just picking a middle ground. That middle ground doesn't please anybody at all. And so while he does have like a couple dozen people in his Discord, or I guess it's like a Telegram group that agree with him voraciously, or whatever the word is, on virtually every issue, those sycophants aren't really the broader Twitter community, which is something that you ought to aspire to pander towards because you want to increase your audience. But that broad appeal that Jaden has, RPG clearly doesn't, because he's thin-skinned on these issues. And I've mentioned some critiques to him in the chats before, and I've been cordial. But the point is that I'm also honest enough to say that he clearly has these issues of insecurity. And it's very flagrantly obvious because a lot of these simple criticisms really piss him off. And there's agitators and trolls in Jaden's chat, and Jaden knocks them down and gets rid of them. He hardly ever gets mad. Part of the reason because he knows he's not self-serious. He knows that things aren't that crazy. And RPG will bring up the point that Kino Casino lies about a lot, that there's a lot of gay ops. And that is somewhat true. But it's all truth and jest, right? It's like, okay, well, Ethan Ralph had 6 to 7 strokes in his less than 40-year-old life. And then PvP exaggerates and says 6 to 7 strokes a day. That's obviously a joke. But then people like Jobless Johnny, Cog, and what's his name, Red Pill Gaming, will basically bring that up as like a criticism, saying like, oh, you're ruining our credibility. You're giving Ralph a W. The fact is that Ralph is losing by so much. According to these people's logic, that tossing him a bone would really just make the content better in a WWE sense. And so really tossing him a bone isn't the biggest deal. But apparently, Red Pill Gaming takes it so seriously that he doesn't want to give the enemy a win. And that's just taking it too personal. And he might say, well, it is personal because they doxed me. Well, I mean, they only doxed you after you talked a bunch of shit about him for years, basically. And then they doxed you. I disagree with them doing that, but at the same time, you know what you did. And, also keep in mind, Jaden McNeil was also doxed. They doxed where he was. They doxed his sister. I've seen all of it, obviously, out of curiosity. I won't share it here. But if you look on Kiwi Farms, there's all sorts of doxing over a myriad of different people. And yet you still chose to show your face on the internet. And so you ought to be able to bear with that. And moreover, you're like 33 years old. So it's like, okay, well, you've been an adult for 15 years. I can't say the same personally. And you're going to go around here complaining about you're getting bullied on the internet, basically. So again, Jaden was doxed voraciously before RPG, younger than RPG in his early 20s. And he still made less of a stink of it than RPG did. Moreover, Jaden McNeil rolled with the punches, whereas RPG doesn't. And so that's part of the problem. Also, people will point out on Twitter, I don't know if RPG said this, but allegedly he said that he wants to run for politics in the future, or that's a possibility. Well, sorry to say, but when you run for president or whatever, you're gonna have to put Theodore Fieser on the ballot, right? Like, again, so the name dox is gonna get out there sometime. And that's just the truth of it. And so I just personally believe that posting his docs on the internet, and by docs I mean just like the name, isn't a big deal because we all know it at this point. If nobody knew what it was, I understand why that could be a problem. But everybody who doesn't like you, RPG, already has your name. If A-logs that aren't willing to actually swat you, that aren't willing to harass you, have the name, it's of no importance, right? For instance, there are people in RPG's personal life, I'm assuming, if he had a girlfriend in the past that happened to be Filipina, she probably knew his full name. His mom knows his name. his cousins, I presume, have his name. People that he knows it from work or something probably know his name. He doesn't see that as a problem because those people like him, and so they won't try to ruin his life. So if PPP and Worski know your full name and they say it, they're not really saying it to a community of people that are trying to harass you. Okay, so I don't see what the big deal is. Okay, I have friends that have my full docs. I don't really care though, because if I'm friends with them, they're not going to betray me, and that's what I need to. That's all I need. So the docs in and of itself isn't the problem. The problem is that if you give it to the wrong people, turns out that the wrong people have had it for about a year at this point. And so, after he gets doxxed on the kill stream or whatever, that's basically it. Like, I don't know how it can get worse. And he made the point before of, I can only get doxxed once. Well, if that's the case, then why keep complaining about it? It's just the Streisand effect, because he's bringing to attention the sort of criticism that ultimately only engenders more criticism. That's how trolling works. If you give them a reaction, they will keep on going. If you just stop responding, then you're gonna win at the end. And the fact is that he just keeps feeding into it because he's insecure as a person. At least that's my read on it. Moreover, so he decides to do this half measure against the Kino Casino. They crap on him anyways, rightfully so. Why? Because it's just funny to make fun of him. And again, they did the same thing to Jaden while he was still in America First, and Jaden he took the punches. Even after he left, they still made gay jokes at his expense. The fact is, though, is that it's not that big of a deal because it's all for fun. And yes, there's some like bigger political connective tissue in regards to like America First and all that, but inevitably it's also for fun. That's the main objective here. And so you're not that much removed from a Chris Chan situation, right? Because again, you're the object of ridicule, and what you need to do is roll with the punches and make fun of yourself. Because why? Because you're a loser in the sector in regards to the bigger dogs. Like I said with the analogy with Sneeko and Andrew Tate, Sneeko has to kiss up, and it doesn't have to be reciprocated all the time. That's how the world works. That's how politics works. That's how any sort of facet of power works, where if you're beneath someone, then you need a respect. And it's not equal. Obviously, when you're the new wagey at the job, they're going to give you the hardest stuff to do because that's how the hierarchy works. But when there's somebody smaller than you can treat them bad too. And RPG is naive. He'll say, "Oh well, I'll treat people better." Who honestly cares? That's not how the world works. You either become a savage or you get eaten by the savages. That's how the world works. Again, I'm a guy who's like 15 years younger than you, pointing it out though, and that seems somewhat pathetic. And a lot of the things that make you like a insecure person, naive on the internet today, are part of the problems with how you joined AF, right? Like I could never see myself being 30 years old joining the movement of a 22-year-old. I could never see that happen personally. I could never do that. Why couldn't I never do that? Because that just seems like a loser thing to do personally. And so if you're that much of a loser at 30, where are you going to be at 33? Well, at 33 right now, you're getting made fun of by an obese younger guy and a guy who's your age, who's a coke addict, in the past. So, who's winning at this point? So at that point, keep in mind, also, somebody like Cog, oh, Cog is this great person. He doesn't do gay ops. Well, turns out that the whole rumor about him, the whole joke, is that he's a welfare recipient who married this like Indian chick. He's being called a pedophile by his own blood, by his own brother. Imagine being that, but like imagine botching your own relationship that hard. Assuming that that isn't true, right? Assuming that he isn't actually a chomo, his brother, his own blood, apparently, is calling him one. I would never let that happen. I would never let my brother say that about me. Hypothetically, how would that ever happen? What kind of white trash family do you have, Cog, in England or wherever you live? Or, Pakistan Junior, where all of a sudden your own brother is going to call you a chomo. How could that ever, ever, ever happen? That is fucking gross. Assuming that isn't even true. If it is true, then walk off a cliff because obviously that's wrong. Anyway, the point being is that right now we're looking at someone who is completely reading into the context too damn naively. You just need to take the jokes, man. And moreover, you shouldn't demand respect from people you call friends because those friends are more popular than you. So they have the right. And right is might. By that, I mean like just generally in the internet, in a secular sense, these people are going to crap on you and they're going to win every time. Because number one, if you were to try to roast PPP and Worski, I don't think you have the gift of gab to do it, for one. And then the second thing would be that clearly you can't keep this amicable relationship because you have your own little problems that add up into grievances for other people. What I mean by that is that these nitpicks, for instance, when you're looking at somebody like what's his name? Okay, when you're looking at certain critiques of him over time, they're like, oh, he put a watermark here or he did something annoying here. These aren't big issues. And people like Warski, PvP have done way worse things. The fact is, though, is that their charisma, their buy-in with the community is so high that they can keep on going and shit on you. And it's not fair. It's not fair. It's not the most ethical thing, but it's also just Kino. It's content. And you're getting eaten by the harvest. You're the corn ready to get harvested. And no, the bird is not the most ethical creature on, it's a sky rodent. But at the end of the day, it's still winning because it's willing to go down there into the mud and pick the best food. Whereas you're over here, moral effing and just being sanctimonious. And people don't want to hear that thing. For instance, the analogy works out in this case where, Donald Trump a couple months ago, before DeSantis even announced he was running for president, was taking shots at DeSantis. And DeSantis would just pretend like it wasn't happening. And guess what? Was that fair to DeSantis? Not really, but it was Kino, and it was deserved because Trump is the Mac Daddy of the Republican Party. And so he gets to do what he wants. He's the kingmaker. Whereas DeSantis, the relative loser, had to take it. That's how the world works. And you ought to be able to take it, RPG, like Jaden did. And that's why everybody likes Jaden. And that's why Jaden is also more popular than you, because he's able to be more just cool with other people. And Jaden's a lot younger than RPG, and RPG has still yet to learn that. And so I just got to say that RPG has some maturing to do. And so my recommendation for him would be to just roll with the punches. But in fact, he just got felted. And if you can't stand a criticism without burning bridges, you ought not be on the internet. You're being way too petty. To have a hug box on Telegram where you're complaining as a 30-something-year-old man about something that somebody says about you on the internet just seems to be completely flying at the face of any sort of logic. And so you ought to be able to really just center yourself down in gravity and say, you know what? I gotta be content. Just be Kino, okay? If people are gonna respect you, it's because you have popularity, because you bring content to the table. If you're gonna be completely petty, self-centered over the stuff over your docs, the fact is that not enough people care. You don't have a big enough audience for people to care about that. That's the end and short of it, okay? The long and short. Sorry. The point is that the guy's not going to be able to really succeed in life if he's not able to really hammer down what people want. What do people want? Do you feed are you feeding them, or are they going to harvest the corn from you? And so right now they're harvesting the corn from you. And that's one other critique. Oh, the Kino Casino is they're taking me as content because that they have nothing else to do. Well, if they respected you more, they obviously wouldn't do that. They don't respect you because you're not somebody to be respected. In real politic terms, you're not big enough for them to be cordial with you. Moreover, you can't take a joke. And so you just let it get on and you let it get worse. That's not something you want to do. Again, Jaden's a clear example here. The third position where Jaden is getting made fun of for the Dumper Wars clip, being gay with Nick, whatever stuff that was fake and kayfabe at the time, but inevitably was really funny. And so he rolled with it, and now he's cool with people, and people don't think he's gay now. That's the whole point. You have to actually roll with the joke or come back with something that's really funny that's scathing on the other direction. What you did was sit in the middle in that last stream and just basically say, well, you know what? I'm the better person, morally speaking. They're in the wrong. That's just gay, okay? Nobody wants to hear that. We're here for fun for the most part. Are there some benefits to A-logging? You could say that, sure, but people at the end of the day just want to have fun. And so, if people want to call you Teddy Feezer, just embrace it for a week. Just call yourself Teddy, not RPG. And people are going to stop making fun of it because who cares, At the end of the day, the people that are making fun of you on Twitter for having that sort of name aren't the ones harassing you on the internet. It's the other group of people. And so aim your ire at them and not the ones that are just making fun of you, okay? You got to roll with it, okay? So keep it steady, Teddy.